As we've seen when it comes to the Acolyte, there's been a lot of virtue signaling about this show before it ever came out, from Kathleen Kennedy herself when she said, you know what, it's just those toxic men that are part of the Star Wars fandom. That's why women get so much criticism here. When in reality, people are judging these things based on the quality of the content, the writing, the storytelling, so many things, rather than whether there's a woman or a black person in it. And as it turns out, when it comes to the Acolyte, despite all of their preaching, despite all of their virtue signaling about female empowerment, when you actually get down to the numbers, it looks like Disney's not actually holding up to their own standards about how much they value women. Star Wars The Acolyte fails progressive purity test, faces new backlash. Well, guess what? What we've always known along, Jeremy, that men are just worth more than women. Just in general, they are. That's why women shouldn't be paid as much. And apparently Lucasfilm and Disney agree. Disney forced to reveal unequal pay on Star Wars show The Acolyte. Documents filed by Disney have revealed its latest Star Wars spin-off series, The Acolyte, isn't actually a force for equality, despite famously featuring a female-centric cast. According to the filings, in early April last year, when production of the streaming service was still in full swing, just 30% of the nearly 700 employees were female across the entire workforce. And women's average hourly pay was 19.4% lower than men.
Oof.
How could you, Disney? How could you let this happen, Kathleen Kennedy, Leslie Headland? How could you do this to the women who are making Star Wars great?
It's almost like reality is reality, and no matter how much you try and build up these fantasies out there, that at the end of the day, when it comes down to the bottom line, reality is still the most important aspect of this. Not surprising at all. It's such a nonsensical argument about the gender pay gap. It's so ridiculous.
It's really stupid because what they're doing with this shit, it is meaningless. I don't give a fuck, right? Because the reality is there's probably men that are working in fields that like get paid more, and there's probably more men working in those fields. And like when you average all of these hourly pays together, it turns out that the women are averaging a little bit less than the men. But the jobs they're talking about are also probably going to be much different and maybe more in demand or more risky or different things like this, more physical labor. There's a lot of things that could go into this number, which is why I wouldn't care about it. But the reason I care about it is that Disney's been fucking virtue signaling about this shit, specifically for this show. Yet when you look and you find the books of their own production, and despite their best efforts to get as many women involved in this thing as possible, apparently they could only get to 30% of those cast and crew, and they weren't paid as much as the men. Boo-hoo, I don't give a fuck. But Disney sure does, based on how they've been virtue signaling. So it's funny that they're getting blasted over this.
It's the same argument. So I brought this up plenty of times when you have the modeling industry. Ryan, who gets paid more in the modeling industry, men or women?
I would guess women.
And it's not even fucking close. Why is that? Well, because women generate more money in the modeling industry. So if women generate more money, they're going to get more money in whatever field. It just happens to be that the majority of industries, men generate more money than women because they are better equipped for the majority of jobs that actually require you to put in the time and the effort and the energy, yada, yada, yada. No one's complaining about the pay gap in the modeling industry, are they? No, because no one gives a fuck. No one gives a shit. Kathleen Kennedy doesn't drive down the street and stop and sees a construction site and says, I'm so upset. There's not enough representation on this roofing job right now. She only does it for the social justice propaganda virtue signaling. She doesn't really care about these things. It's all just projection to pretend that you're a better person. That's it. She's never driven down the street with her fucking Frank Marshall, her fucking husband. Said, stop, honey. There is a construction job going on over there, and all I see is men, and we need more representation in the construction industry. She doesn't give a fuck about this. No one gives a fuck about this. It's a fake thing to actually care about. No one gives a shit.
Yeah, and so it's funny to see them ending up getting called out for this when so much of the virtue signal is about how all these toxic male fans, we need to uplift and empower our female creators and people that work here at Lucasfilm. It's not fair to them. when you're forced to reveal the real numbers for this shit, there you have it. And I can't wait because this is happening because it was filmed in the UK, right? We wouldn't be getting these numbers if it was filmed in fucking Georgia or Ohio or wherever the fuck, right? But because it's in the UK, because they go there to get that tax break, you have to very specifically delineate all of these costs, which is why we end up getting to know the real budgets. So they claim $180 million on this thing, considering pre-production was like $50 million just for this series. I'd be shocked if at the end of the day, it doesn't balloon up to over 180 million in general. And that's going to be really funny when those final numbers come out.
You get what you deserve. And again, Ryan's right. This really, like, no one really cares about this. We don't really care about these things in terms of, I don't care who's hired for the job as long as it's the best person for the job. I don't give a shit. But it's Disney's virtue signaling that backfires gloriously on them because of all the statements they've made about this. And then when you actually see the internals, it just exposes them as the hypocrites they are, and the hypocrites we've always said that they are.
Like oftentimes when you like get down to these things and you look at these pay gaps and blah, 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 it's because people are doing different jobs, right? And predominantly men end up doing some of the jobs that might be more risky or dangerous or require some specialized training or whatever, that end up at a little higher pay scale than some of the women that might also be involved. But that doesn't mean that if a woman's doing that job and gets hired to do one of those jobs, that they wouldn't get paid exactly the same as the men do. Yeah. So the whole argument is fucking ridiculous and stupid, but they're the ones that have been preaching about this for forever. They're the ones that claim they care. I don't give a fuck, but they do.